predetermined videos in order, and then he lists 3 YouTube links.
Sounds like a trap. He was trying to grab you by the ponytail and bring you into.
Well, it worked. If there is the slightest chance you could consider this even possible, please email me. Well, I'm not going to email you, but I'm making an episode. I replied. I said, okay, I watched the links. Report pending. Thanks, Coy. Link. That's what I wrote in response. Okay, so I click on the first link, not knowing what this is, and it's the actor from Star Trek The Next Generation, the guy who plays Q. He was also on an episode of Breaking Bad. He was the air traffic controller. He was being interviewed at a Comic-Con about doing a voice for the villain on the cartoon on the Hub Network called My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Yep.
My little pony, my little pony.
And then he starts talking about how there's a whole group of people who are not the original intended audience of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, i.e. not 7 to 9-year-old girls, or I don't know the exact age range. I know my daughter's 9 years old, and she really likes My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. She watched it on Netflix.
Yep.
But what I kind of heard rumblings of was that there was a whole other group of people, a lot of which are guys who are older. I'm talking like the 18 to 34-year-old range, who actually watch My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, and they call themselves bronies. I had heard about this.
Rumblings. It's been about
this is not news
a year or so
to many
ago.
of you.
But I never looked into it. I just and many of you commented, you guys should talk about bronies. Well, Link has now done the research into the situation and is now for a report.
So, Q, or the guy who plays Q, that's not his real name. That's just his character's name.
Should just
Star Trek
Q.
Next Generation. He talks about, he starts talking about bronies and how he's starting a Kickstarter campaign to do a documentary about the subject. And I'm like, okay. And then I click on the next link that Coy has left for us, and it is a remix music video of footage from My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, that's with fan-generated music. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. There's like a mimic factor to this thing. And then I click on the third link, and he says, grab some popcorn for this one.
Oh, wow.
And I realized
this is long.
This is a 1-hour-long documentary where this guy, Saber Spark.
What you are about to see is a presentation I made for a school project. The class was study of deviance, and my goal was to show how bronies were a deviant subculture.
I say to myself, okay, Coy, I just can't sit here and watch this for an hour, especially when it starts off with, it's just footage from My Little Pony and him talking about it.
But you watched it for the entire hour.
But then I ended up watching the whole thing. Now it starts
all that coming.
It starts with the 1980s version, original incarnation of the cartoon My Little Pony. Then it goes through the 90s generation. I think there's like 3 generations prior to what spawned bronies in the current incarnation. And he talks and gives critical analysis of each of these versions of My Little Pony from like an adult male's perspective.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I don't understand what's happening here. So I started fast forwarding a little bit until I get to a point where he talks about.
You skipped a little.
I did. I did. He's doing character analysis and things like that, and he says that that this is mostly lame from his perspective. Then he starts giving the history of how the Hub decided to bring it back, and a lot of critics thought, okay, this is just a ploy to sell more toys. But then what happened was the people who criticized it started saying, but the characters and the stories and the animation are all ultra legit.
Now, if you would have told me that I would be crazy over a show about ponies 5 months ago, I would have thought you were lying. Yet here I am, with pony toys on my shelf and love and tolerance in my heart.
Now, I've watched some of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic with my daughter. Lily is 9, and she loves it. She's watched all of them on Netflix, like I said. And I'll be honest with you, I was not drawn in to the point where
you wanted to make a documentary about it.
Yeah, or talk about it for an hour. But I will say this: as the guy was talking about it, and I started to get a little bit of it and realize, okay, this is how I'll describe it. I'll describe it like the Animaniacs phenomena. Now, Animaniacs, I watched past into my teens. Man, I could have been 20 watching Animaniacs in rerun form because they had humor that was for older people that the kids who were originally intended for couldn't get.
Smarter humor.
Yeah, I mean, there's references, according to this documentary, in My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, to David Bowie.
Ever heard of Diamond Dogs? David Bowie has.
And there's a cameo by The Big Lebowski and Walter. Friendship is Magic was created for little girls. But it was created in such a way so that their parents, even their dad, somebody like me could sit down with my daughter Lily and find these things that they would miss, but I would think they were hilarious. So there's some of that. So it was designed to also hook the parents, or at least make them not want to blow their brains out if they had to watch it with their kids.
This is a trend. You mentioned Animaniacs, which I watched, was a big fan of for a really long time, into my teenage years. And that was the exception back in the day. You couldn't watch.
Right.
If you go back and watch He-Man or Smurfs, if you go back and watch that stuff that was
just for kids,
made in the 80s, it makes you want to blow your brains out. But it's almost so bad, and the dialogue is so bad, and there is no character development, almost so bad that it becomes entertaining again, like a bad local commercial.
Right.
But then somehow, maybe in the 90s, and definitely now, there's very little kids programming that doesn't, like, I sit down and watch, my kids watch Phineas and Ferb, and it's funny, it's hilarious, it's very, very well done.
There are college students that love Yo Gabba Gabba.
Yeah, that's kind of,
not to mention SpongeBob.
that's the kind of trend.
But the weird thing about this is that, okay, this is for 7-year-old, 9-year-old girls. Isn't it weird that, like conceivably a 30-year-old guy could be into this, not having daughters? And
yes.
On the surface that seems weird, but I think the first thing to clarify is that these 30-year-old or 20-year-old guys are not watching it with these little girls.
They're watching it alone in their basement.
It's a totally separate group of people here. This is more of like a geek subculture, at least from my impression, predominantly geek kind of people who find an appreciation in the artistry of My Little Pony, and that the people who are writing and directing and creating this thing are, have that kind of aesthetic and that kind of appreciation. But it's not as weird as I thought it was.
But it is at the same time. But the reason that it has become a thing, this is my theory, the reason that it has become a thing, and that there are bronies, and that there are dudes who identify themselves as fans of My Little Pony in a way that they would never identify themselves as fans of Phineas and Ferb or whatever, is because it is so diametrically opposed in terms of demographic. The intended demographic is so different from them that it makes it seem a little ironic or a lot ironic, and then that's why they're so excited about it, because it's like, hey man, I'm so cool that I like My Little Pony. It isn't that it isn't good. I understand. We watched a little bit of it before this episode, and I understand. I could sit there and it's bearable on some level. I'm not really that into it, but I would say a sense of rebellion. That people are sort of like, I'm rebelling against what's normal. It's not normal for me to like this, so therefore I'm going to like it that much more.